Hi, and welcome back. After taking this lesson, you will be able to answer few of the most popular questions of beginner interview related to exceptions. For example, what are the difference between checked and unchecked exception? What is the difference between error and exception? What is the difference between throw and throws? What is the difference between finally and finalize? And much more. In this lesson, I will do an overview on the exception concept and syntax. In the next lesson, we will see a code sample which will take the concept into practice. So let's start. An exception is a problem that arises during execution of a program. We have three categories of exception: checked exception, unchecked exception, and errors. Let's review the exception hierarchy in Java. All exception classes are subtype of the Java lang exception class. The exception class is a subclass of throwable class. Other than the exception class, there is another subclass called error, which is derived from the throwable class. Errors are abnormal conditions that happen in case of severe failures. These are not handled by the Java program. Errors are generated to indicate error generated by the runtime environment. For example, when JVM is out of memory, it will throw out of memory error. Another example is when stack overflow happens. Then a stack overflow error will be thrown by the JVM. Normally, programs cannot recover from errors. All classes which are subclass of exception are called checked exception. For example, Java have some familiar exception like file not found exception, IO exception, and many more. Checked exception must be handled by the programmer, even by try and catch block or by throws declaration on the method. Otherwise, a compilation error would happen. The exception class has one subclass which represents runtime exception. This kind of exception are also called unchecked exception. For example, null pointer exception, array index out of bound. These are runtime exception. Runtime exception doesn't have to be handled by the programmer explicitly, and there will be no compilation error. Now let's talk about catching exception. A method catch an exception using a combination of try and catch keywords. A try-catch block is placed around the code that might generate an exception. A try block can be followed by multiple catch blocks. The syntax for multiple catch block look like the following. Notice that since Java 7, you can handle more than one exception using a single catch block. This feature simplifies the code. Here's how you would do it. Let's talk about the throws and throw keywords. If a method does not handle a checked exception, the method must declare it using the throws keyword. The throws keyword appears at the end of the method signature. The throw keyword is used to throw an exception, either a newly instantiated one or an exception that you just caught by using the throw keyword. Try to understand the difference between throws and throw keyword. Throws is used to postpone the handling of the checked exception, and throw is used to invoke an exception explicitly. A method can declare that it throws more than one exception, in which case the exceptions are declared in a list separated by comma. For example, the following method declares that it throws my custom exception and an array index out of bound exception. Okay, let's talk about the finally block. The finally block follows a try block or a catch block. A finally block of code always executes even if the exception wasn't happen. Using a finally block allows you to run any cleanup type statement that you want to execute, no matter what happened in the protected code. Please note that it is not compulsory to have a finally clauses whenever a try block is present. Last thing I want to mention here that you can create your own exception in Java. Keep the following point in mind when writing your own exception classes. All exception must be child of throwable. If you want to create checked exception, you need to extend the exception class. If you want to write a runtime exception, you should extend the runtime exception class. This is all for the theoretical part of exception. Join me to the next lesson in which we will see all this and more with a code sample.